Hey everybody, welcome to my workspace. So we will run through the supplies real quick we will be using to render this Lucky Gnome. As you can see, I have the gnome up in the corner here as our reference. I've got our 8x10 stretch canvas right here with the design already sketched out. I've got a paint palette and some brushes that I will be using. So I'll be using a size 6 round brush, maybe a size 8 round brush, a size 6 round brush, and a smaller flat brush. This is probably a 1/4 inch flat brush. These are unbranded brushes, but they're nice brushes to use. I've got a paint palette. So this is a stay wet palette actually. So it's got a sponge underneath. I'll show you real quick, if I can. A sponge underneath that is wet. And then I've got my palette paper down. It keeps the paint from drying out so quick. And then it's in this palette bin, if you will. It does have a lid to it as well. If you need to come back to your painting later with the lid on and the paint stays wet and does not dry. It doesn't dry out. Okay, so, and then I have paper towels, or if you have a kitchen rag, you can use a kitchen rag. Those are used to clean your brushes off before you move into another color. Okay, so the colors I have chosen to use are titanium white. These are all Deco Art paint brand, except for one. One of them is a different brand. This is Deco Art Desert Turquoise. We have Citron Green. We have Warm Beige. We've got Festive Green, a festive green color. And this color is a green oxide, which I have a bottle of this. This is from Blick Art, and I got this by the gallon, so I actually put some of it in a squeezy bottle. So Citron Green, it's a little bit darker than the Festive Green. Okay, so 2 greens, a light and a dark. Actually 3 greens, a light, dark, and a really light yellowish green, turquoise, white, and a warm beige color. Okay, so those are our supplies. We will start with the background of this gnome, and I will be using the turquoise and titanium white for the background. We will get started with those 2 colors. Okay. So I'm going to put a little bit of turquoise right in the corner, not much, maybe a dime size of the turquoise to start. And right next to it, we will put the white. We will be mixing the white and turquoise together to do the background. So I'll use my flat brush to do that, or 1/4 inch flat brush. So I'm just going to go ahead and mix some white and turquoise together, and I'll go right in around my design outline. And they don't have to be completely blended. If you have some more white and turquoise, that's fine. In some areas, you want it to vary a little bit. So maybe I'll grab just some more pure turquoise and bring that around my design. So I'm working on a smaller canvas today, just so we don't spend hours and hours on this painting. So I'm just going to brush the background in and very loose strokes. It's kind of negatively painting around our gnome. Maybe a little bit lighter as we get around the design of the gnome. If you go into the gnome design itself, into the body of the gnome, that's okay. We can cover it up with paint. You'll see. I'm going to go up here, grab some more of the turquoise and white, blended together, vary the colors a little bit. If you're not comfortable using a flat brush, you can move to a round brush to do this. Round brushes sort of make you feel like you're holding a pencil tip. So if you're more comfortable using a round brush, let's say we'll grab the size 8 round brush, the bigger one, and we'll just use the tip like a pencil and go around the edges of our gnome design. Flat brushes tend to help get a little bit more paint on the canvas than your round brushes. But they do help when you go into some detailed sections, like, or some smaller sections, like in between the lines. And we can go in between like this with the point of a round brush and use it sort of like a pencil because it has a nice tip. So if I wanted to go into some of the sections of his mustache, it's probably easier to use a smaller round brush to get into those sections. And like I said, if you get into the design of your gnome, like I did here a little bit, that's okay because we can cover that up once it's dry. So I'm not too worried about being right along the lines and getting paint colors where I don't really want them. I'm not too worried about that because that's not really going to matter in the end. Okay. So we've got our background in right about where we want it. Should be fine like that. Now with acrylic paint, you do not want your paint to dry on your brush, so don't let the acrylic paint necessarily sit on your brush. I'm going to redo this a little bit. If I start to mumble, don't try and listen, I'm just mumbling to myself. So now also with the background, while I'm doing the background, I'm going to grab quite a bit of paint and I will paint the edges of my canvas. It helps the painting look finished once you're done. So I'm going to just go over the edges of my stretch canvas in that turquoise and white color. Doesn't have to be perfect, just get those edges painted. It helps it look like a finished painting. Okay. Especially if you're not framing your stretch canvas. There are frames that are made for stretch canvases where you can sink your canvas into the frame. But if you're not framing it and just hanging it as it is, you will definitely want to paint your edges. It gives you that finished look. So when it's hung up on the wall, you don't see these paint strokes all over the place. So I've got my edges painted just like that. Set this back down. Don't mind the hole in my desk. I was drilling a hanger into a wood sign, into a small round wood sign, and I was over here and I drilled right through and it hit my art desk, which is fine. It's an art desk. That's what it's for. You know? Okay, so we've got that one. Let's go ahead and finish off our background with our circles, just to get that in there. So what I'm going to do is rinse off my round brush and grab just the turquoise, just the pure turquoise, no white in it. Now you can use your round brush, or if you have a paint dauber like this, you can daub in your circles and just paint them on like that. Okay, for me, since I have the daubers, I will use the dauber. Made a big circle there, maybe a smaller circle here. And you can go down into the edges of your canvas too. So I'll show you also that you can use your round brush if you don't have a dauber. I'm going to make a big circle here too, because I feel like it. So the round brush, you take your brush, sort of grab the center of a circle, and then smoosh your brush down and around, and then fill it in. Go into the center of where your circle is. Brush is straight up and down. Make a circle. Okay. Let's say we'll do a half circle here. And they don't have to be perfect circles. They can just be a little wonky. I actually like using the paintbrush for this. You find after you paint a while, you get good at making circles. You really do. I'm gonna fix this circle here because I feel like it got a little bit out of hand. I'm gonna make it more circular. And do, for some reason, I just want big circles on the corners here. Sort of frames our gnome. Maybe a little circle up here. That. And you can add as many circles as you want. Just vary the size a bit. I'll make one right here. It's a little one coming off the edge. Grab a bit more paint as your brush unloads the paint on your canvas. You want more paint. So circles, really your paintbrush should be sort of straight up and down like this, and just spin it around. And I think that's good for the circles for now. We can always add more later. I'll give my brushes a good rinse. I haven't even begun. I've already got paint on my fingers. Always have wipes and baby wipes. It works both to wash your hands off, and if you make any marks on your canvas that you don't want, you can always wipe it off with a baby wipe. Okay. So the next step is to sort of paint in our, let's see, what do we want to do next? Let's do our hat. So I forgot, we have one more color, and that's lamp black. It was hiding over there. And so we're going to do some lamp black. Okay, and maybe a touch of festive green. And mix those two together, and we're going to paint the hat of this cute gnome with those colors. So I'm going to use my flat brush again. I'm going to give it a really good rinse and a really good dry off. You want your paint to be as dry as possible. We're not working with watercolor today. We're working with acrylic. I'm going to put my paint dauber, give it a little, ooh, that's a lot of paint in there. And just stick it in the cup. I'm going to grab some black and some green and give him a greenish black hat. So the next step is I can still see my sketch lines, so I'm going to go over those first so I know where they're at. And I'm going to fill in the hat. A little bit more green right here. And again, if you're not comfortable with a flat brush, especially around the rounded edges, you can switch to your round brush. What I can say is when you're outlining your design, and you're using a flat brush, use the flat part of your brush and stick it on your line, straight up and down like this. Push it to your line and then swoop into the body of the shape. So we want to, and then we can smooth it all out. So we want to think of all of these things as shapes. So how am I going to move my brush to make that shape? So let's say we've got a round edge here. So I'm going to just sort of push my brush up to that edge. Use the corner of your brush to round it off, just like you would with the tip of a round brush. So I'm using now just one corner and going in to the round parts of my design. And I am going around right now the clover or the shamrock, which is part of the clover flower, on his hat. Okay. So we'll add some highlights and details later, but right now we're just blocking in the color. Okay, so we've got that. Now I'll show you the same, squeeze out some of this paint. Excuse me, the same technique with a round brush. So we've got our round brush, and maybe if you're just beginning, use a round brush. So I've got my design lines. I'm going to grab the tip of my round brush, put it on the start of the line, press it down a bit, and go around. Doesn't matter if you run out of paint, just get it on there. You can always fill in the brush marks. And as you get to the thinner parts of your line, lift up and use just the tip of your brush. Okay. So I've got that thin part right here. I used just the tip of my brush. If I'm filling in a bigger area, I'll smush down the belly of the brushes like in the middle. It's your wider part. And I'll smush down and swirl it around and fill in. And you see I've got the cheek of the gnome right here. So I'm going to use the tip of my brush, outline the cheek, just like that. Okay. And then fill in the rest of the shape of the hat around the cheek. Okay. And grab some more green and blue. Use quite a bit of black, but that's okay. And then we're going to do the same thing. We see our shapes. So I've got a clover shape here. So I'm going to use just the tip of my brush like a pencil. Sort of go around it so I can see it. There it is. And then I'll fill in the bigger areas with the belly of my brush. I got a cheek here, so I'm going to go around the cheek with the tip of my brush. It doesn't matter if your cheek gets a little cheeky or a little wonky, we can always fix that later. And if you got any turquoise in your body of your gnome, we can always fix that by covering it up with the color we're using, darker color. Okay, almost done with the side. So I've got a little piece here. Now it goes around his nose, around the clover, and then a little part in the center. I'll just sort of dab in the paint to fill it in. Okay. And if you wanted to add some more green to your hat, you can, while it's still wet, you can mix some more green in there. Get some of that green to sort of pop through. I'm going to grab just some of this green and pull it into my design. And again, we're going to be using some more layers to map out the details later. So again, we're blocking out color and the colors we want to use. I'm going to grab just a touch more green right about in the middle of the hat. And since my paint is still wet, I can blend it in on the canvas. Might be a little bit harder for y'all to see. It looks a bit more black on the camera, but I can see the green hint coming through the black. Okay, so we're going to keep that just like that and wait for it all to dry. And we can add another layer if we need to in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to give this brush a good wash. Your water might look dirty, but believe it or not, it's not as dirty as you think. See, mine looks gray. All you have to do is just keep rinsing and drying, and it'll clean it all up. In our next step, I think I'm going to go ahead and paint in the sleeves of the arm and the rim of the hat. Sleeves of the arm, the rim of the hat, and then we'll move on from there. sleeves of the arm and the rim of the hat are going to be a combination of this festive green, which I'll put right here. That was quite a lot. That's okay. And then this citron green. So our goal is to make the rim of the hat and the sleeve of the hat a bit lighter than what our clovers are going to be, or what our shamrocks are going to be. So I'm going to mix those two colors together. I don't want it to be a super bright festive green. I want some of that yellow in there, that yellowish citron green. So we'll see what we come up with. I'm going to rinse this brush just a little bit more because I had some black still on there. Dry it off. Let's do that again. Here we go. This will be good. And if it's not completely blended, that's okay. Let's start with the arm. You can have a variation of color. It adds more interest and a nice variety of color to look at. So I'm just outlining where my lines are at. And again, if you have painted inside your gnome with that turquoise color, don't worry about it. It is okay because we can cover it up with the next layer. I would say as long as your layers are dry, you can cover them up. So I'm going to work on the next arm. With my painting classes as well, the in-person classes that I had spoke about earlier, these designs will already be on your canvas, so you do not have to draw them yourself. The canvas will already be pre-drawn for you using a sublimate canvases with these designs for you. Most of my classes are beginner classes and people who just want to hang out and have fun painting. And those are the in-person classes. And same with the online bit. Okay, so we got that arm in, got that arm in. You'll see some of the brush strokes on the first layer. These colors are quite transparent. I think I'm going to add just a touch more festive green to, if your brush gets loaded with paint, just kind of twirl it around, wipe it off. We don't want it all the way loaded with paint, so I'm going to just swirl around in the middle here, get it started. And come around here. And go around the edges of the black part of the hat. And we'll add the highlights and details later. And I'll remind you as you paint, it's going to go through a phase where it does not look all that great. But once you've got all the elements down, all the paint on, and any little details, it will look really cute. So I'm going to just squiggle this green down in there. Maybe some lighter green. Taking that citron green and putting some more in there. So I'm going to, let's see if I can speak right today. Leave it just like that. And so our next step, let's go ahead and paint in the clover. I'm going to use a darker green, which is the green oxide. It's called green oxide. I'll really dry off my brush. And I'm going to start with the big clover here. So I'm going to go ahead and just get that in the center, just get my paintbrush primed a little bit. And then I'll start working on edging out the clover. So point of my brush, swoop it down. Point of my brush along the edges, press it down towards the shape, the center of the shape. Go around the little hand. Spread some of that paint around as you go. Use some of the paint that's on the canvas if you've got a lot of paint. If it's still wet, just drag it around. Make it do its job. It's not to just sit there and puddle up, it's to paint the canvas with color. Okay, I'm going to keep doing this big clover here. Tip of the brush, outline, outline, drag it into the shape. See if I can show you what I mean. So I got the tip of my brush. I'm going to go up to the outline where I see my lines, shape it out, and then just swirl the brush into the big shape, into the bigger area. Okay, and you can even flip your canvas around if you're in a tight spot and you don't want to twist your arm around. You can just turn your canvas upside down, sideways, whatever way you need to get to those shapes. And then we'll do the stem. Okay. And keep it like that. And again, some of these colors are pretty transparent, so we will be working with more layers in just a minute. So there's the clover there. We'll do the clover up here. So a little bit of a smaller clover. Just going to grab some paint, put it on there. Smoosh my brush around, and then just use the tip of my brush and start outlining and bringing the paint up to the edge. And into the shape. Grab a little bit more paint over here. Gonna turn it around and do this edge of the clover here, up to the outline and back into the shape. Up to the outline and back into the shape. And you don't have to press real hard. The harder you press, the more paint that's going to come out from the belly of your brush. So this is just the first layer. Okay. We're blocking in all the colors first before we add a second layer on the details. Next step, we're going to paint the nose, the skin, so the nose, the cheeks, and the hands. And I'm going to use this warm beige. Throws a sort of pink hue to it. Make sure your brush for this color is really washed off because you don't want any green in that beige for this design. So I'm going to just make sure my brush is really nice and washed off of that green and dried. Okay, so beige. Let's start with his nose because that's fun. The nose is quite fun. We're using the tip of my brush, or grabbing a bead of paint that seems to flow with your outline and just grabbing that outline and then filling it in. It is a lot like coloring. If you get a little bit too much up in an area like I just did there, that's okay. I can just adjust that once I go back over with my next layer. So even though all the skin colors are going to be pretty much the same, going to do each shape separately instead of just blobbing the color all over the place. It helps your mind sort of remember the shapes you're working with so that when you go to add the details and the separation from like the nose to the cheek, and we'll add the separation using a white or a lighter color, sort of helps you remember that shape. Say, okay, I'm working with this cheek shape. I may even leave a little bit of a white gap between the nose and the cheek, just so I remember where I'm at. Okay, so cheeks and nose done. Hands, I'm gonna do the hands. The little gnome hands are so cute, they're just round circles. How easy is that? Or semicircles, or whimsical circles. One hand on this guy's a little bit bigger, so don't freak out. It's meant to be that way. Okay. Here we go. First layer of the skin done. And then, oh, one more spot. I missed a spot. The little mouth area. We're going to paint that mouth area. That skin color too. The mouth area that is between the mustache. Here we go. And then the next blocking of color is our titanium white. I'm going to pick a spot, like right here, and I will be painting the mustache and the beard, this titanium white. The gnomes sort of remind me of the, what do you call them? I can't think of it now. Give me a minute. I'll remember. The little guy, what's his name? At the end of the rainbow. So I lost a little bit of my swirl here, so I'm going to bring that back in with the white. No, I'm just going to swirl it back in. I lost it because I painted over with the turquoise. So if you lost some of your lines, just go with it. Paint the shape of a swirly mustache. That's all we're going for. It doesn't have to be exact. The leprechaun. Oh my gosh, I just thought of it. The leprechaun at the end of the rainbow. So he's our symbol of the leprechaun. Okay. So I'm just adding white to the already white part of the canvas. And I've sort of lost my swirly shape here too, so I'm going to add that back in. Swirl your brush around. If you have trouble making swirls, just have a practice sheet of paper and just take your brush and swirl it around on the paper, and you'll get those swirls down. Okay, and now we're going to paint the beard part. And with your paintbrush, you're also just sort of trimming up those lines, refining them, adjusting as you go if you need to. Okay. So we have pretty much blocked in all of our color on every section that we're going to use for the rest of the layers. And that helps give you a reference of where you're going for the rest of the painting. So what I'm going to do is let this completely dry. I need the mustache and the beard and the hands and the face to completely dry before we move on. So stay with me and we will be right back. Okay, we are back and our canvas is nice and dry. We can add some more layers to it. So I'm really excited to get this done. So the next step, we're going to go ahead and use the paints that we've already got on here, and we're going to start with the hat. We're going to make some squiggly lines for some highlights. So we're going to go ahead and just make a highlight there. We're going to make some squiggly line here and here and here and here. And here. And if we need to add some more layers, we can. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab some highlights to bring this to life a little bit. And you'll see, do this. You'll see how these little details sort of give us some more shape and some added depth to our painting. So I'm just going to add, just because I want to sort of get some highlights in there right now so I can see how it's coming together. I'll highlight on the nose, of course on the cheeks, you want some highlights. He's looking cute so far. And then for the beard, what I was thinking, I grabbed another color. I grabbed a glorious gold metallic color because I noticed in the reference photo, let me shoot that over to you. The reference photo has some gold in there, doesn't it? See that gold or orange? I'm going to call that gold. And then we've got some gray, which we'll use some gray as well. Okay. So we're going to bounce around with this gold a little bit. I'm going to add just a bit more highlights to the nose area and bring his nose like he's looking up a little bit, maybe into the mouth. The other thing I wanted to do, which is not shown in the photo, is for the clovers, I do want to add a little bit of this citron green. And I wanted to add that sort of just in the center of the shamrock leaves. Something like that. So it'll bring out some more. My white was still wet, so that did get a bit white there, but it's okay. I'm pointing right into the center of the clover. I think that'll give us a little bit more depth into these clovers. Or these shamrocks. I keep going back and forth between clover and shamrock. So it's the clover flower leaves. Many of you have grown clovers. They're so beautiful. We use clover as a cover crop for our garden. When the clover flowers come out, they're so pretty. So I'm just going to add this citrus green into these flower shapes. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just add some of that green in there. You can mix it with white, and that's okay. Just want that to sort of pop out a bit more. And then I can add some more oxide green along the edges and sort of blend it in. Almost reminds me of a heart shapes. And these are just little details that you can add as you go. And another layer of green to the stem, so it has some more contrast with the black down there. And then I can just take my green oxide, grab another layer on the outside of the clover, pop that in, in the center a little bit. Clovers sort of have this center. We're not really going for realism here, just color balance. And try not to add another layer until that last layer was dried if you wanted to pop out some more. So just wait a little bit. If your paint's already dry, go ahead and add. Otherwise, it will just mix. My citron right here is dry, so I'm going to go ahead and add some of that citron green into here. Try not to touch the green oxide I just laid down because that is still pretty wet. So the point of all that is if your paint is still wet, whatever color you lay down on top of it will actually blend with it and not make it, will not be the color that you laid down. It'll mix. If I want it to mix, that's great. If I don't, wait for it to dry. Okay, so I'm going to grab a little bit more citron for up here. This citron green. This other green's still pretty wet, so I may just have to wait if I want to do anything else with this clover on his hat. And you'll see as you start painting. But for now, it looks cute. Okay, we'll keep it there. And then for the mustache and the beard, I'm going to rinse my brush off and take some of this white and some of this black and make a gray. Any spot on your palette. Just a little bit of black and some white. Got a lot of paint on my brush. I'm going to roll it around a little bit. And just with the tip, I'm going to grab some gray. And it doesn't matter where your lines really go. We're just sort of breaking up his beard and his mustache with some squiggly lines. Random. Going to a swirl a little bit. Something like that. If you want some darker gray, to add in there. Just grab that darker gray. You make gray with black and white, so you can add some darker gray to the lighter gray. Maybe outline some of these features with that darker gray. And break it up. Right? That's still pretty wet. If you wanted to go in and cover up some more of your layering on your sleeve, add some of that citron green and that festive green together. You can go over your sleeve again. I already put some highlights in there, so I'll just sort of work around those highlights. And sort of add a deeper color. And go, just deepen it up just a little bit. We can do the same thing in the hat. What I like to do is just sort of go around with the squiggly lines I've already made and just add some more color. And if you cover up your white, that's okay. We can always go back over that. Okay. With this clover on top, I'm not totally happy with it yet, so I'm going to add just a bit more citron. Now that the green oxide is dried. Doesn't have to be all around the clover, just wherever you want it. And that looks good to me. Okay. Now we can do a little bit more. After this dries, we'll add some more highlights and stuff, but let's do a little bit more to the hat. So yeah, for the hat, I'm going to add just a little bit of green, a little bit more like some green swirls to it. Doesn't have to be everywhere. Maybe just use a dry brush and get some green in there. Dry brush meaning you're just sort of not really painting on the full color of green, just a little bit of a brushy green look to it. Like that. It's hard to see in this light. Let's see if I can bring it up. Like that. We'll do the same thing around the hat. Sort of scrubbing that green in there. A little bit. I noticed that when it dried, it did dry a bit more black than I wanted. I wanted the green to show through more. But it did not, and that's okay. So I'm going to just adjust that. And then here where I've got my nose, I'm going to add another black line just right there. Okay, I am going to wash my brush off and dry it off really well. And I'm going to go back into the warm beige and add some more. I know I've already put my highlights down, but they're dry. And I can always add the highlights back if I go over too much. So I'm going to give this a more solid color around the nose and the cheeks. Now you could have called this done with what we've already accomplished, but I wanted to add and fill in another layer. And some of my paint is wet in areas, so I'll just try and avoid those areas when I'm adding layers. Sort of deepens the shapes and brings them out a bit more than they were. And you're adding these layers. Super cute. Oh my gosh. Can't take it anymore. So cute. That black was still wet up there, so that's okay. I'll just smooth it along there. Got some black into the nose, so I'll wait for it to dry and I'll fix that here in just a second. What else is next? Let's go ahead and do, while this all dries, let's do the outside. So I've got the glorious gold, and I'm going to make, let's go back to the picture here. Oops. So I'm going to do some outlines of gold around the hat, the clovers. When the nose is dry, I'll do that. When the hands are dry, I'll do that. And then we'll do some dots of gold on the background, and we'll do some black outline as well. Okay, so that's where we're at. So what did I say we'll start with? Let's start with the black outline since we know the background is dry. So we're going to go just with the tip of our brush. Just some light squiggly lines. Give it a nice little festive cheer. Darken up some of those lines. Don't want to do too much. And then we'll do some spots of gold in the background. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You don't have to count. Just random. As random as possible. Hold that up to the camera there. Got some gold spots. There we go. And let's do some gold outline while we're at it. So I've got the gold on the brush. I'm just going to take the tip of my brush and outline these features here. So tip of our brush, just some real light strokes, nothing too heavy. I think his hands are pretty well dried, enough for me to do the outline. And it doesn't have to be completely symmetrical. Let's make some real whimsical outlines going on here. Maybe put some gold in his beard, because, you know, after all, he is a leprechaun. And go around his mustache a little bit. And we'll go around the clovers. So I'll have to remind myself that I pulled out the glorious gold for this, so I can add it to the supply list. It will make a little bit of gold. However you want to pop your gold in there. And then I'm going to do some more of the white and put that back into the hat, the band of the hat here. Maybe a few highlights in the clovers themselves again, because I lost those. There we go, guys. And there is our lucky gnome. I think it looks beautiful. If we want beautiful, I don't know if beautiful is a word for it. If you wanted to, now I didn't outline in black yet, but we could. So let's go ahead and do that. I thought it was done, but it's not. Let's maybe add just a touch of black to some of these outlines, maybe not all of them, just a touch. You don't want a lot. And not around the whole thing, just in a few areas, because you don't want it to look like you drew in with black, if that makes sense. I'll make it look better if you don't do the entire outline. And make them very loose strokes. It's almost sketch-like. Almost like you're sketching with the tip of your paintbrush. Okay? If you wanted to add a little bit more dark squiggles, you can, to make these pop a little bit. Probably did a little bit too much right there, but that's just the way it goes. I think it'll look good. Whatever you decide. Okay. And if you decide that there's too much black, just cover it over with the previous color and let it be that. All right, there's our lucky gnome. I think it looks really cute, and I hope you join me for our in-person class. If not, visit the link below. You have the digital downloads. They are available on my store, and you'll get the supply list, the step-by-step instructions, and that'll be good for you to get started. That's all. Thanks, guys. Bye.